All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy January 2024. I'm excited about today's workshop tonight. I'm calling this, um, it's life management or time management, but it's also priority management because, you really can't manage time. Time just is. It just ticks along. It's just, 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week, 365 days a year. But it's really, do you manage yourself? Do you manage your priorities? Do you manage your calendar? So I'm excited to jump in it with you. This recording will be available for you to go back if you need to, but also to share with anyone who you think might benefit from this. So we got this recorded. So thank you for jumping on and congratulations for jumping on. Um, I, you know, how many of you I know not everyone's on screen right now, but you can either put a 1 in the chat if you feel like you are great with time management. Who feels like they're great with time management? Put a 1 in the chat. Okay, it's not blowing up. All right. Um, Let me ask you this question, and you can come off mute if you want to answer this. How would you know if someone was great with time management? What are some characteristics, some traits, some signs that somebody is really good with time management? Who'd be willing to come off? Either write in the chat or come off mute and just share. A little popcorn. Being productive? Yes, for sure. Getting stuff done. There's a great book called Getting Stuff Done by David Allen. What else? How do you know when somebody's good at time management?
They're good at follow-up.
They're good with follow-up. They're organized, right? They don't let a lot of stuff slip through the cracks. They don't forget stuff, right?
Yep.
Okay. What else? Anything else? They're on time. Aha. Yes, that's a good one. Thank you. Okay, good. Efficient, says Sarah. Not a lot of waste, right? Yeah. Okay. So put a 2 in the chat if you wish there were more hours in a day. I think it's going to blow up. There it goes. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So, but like I said, there aren't more hours in a day. And I was talking to somebody and I invited them to this workshop. And ironically, they said, I'm too busy. I'm too busy for a time management workshop. And I'm like, well, isn't that a great reason to be on a time management workshop so that you can actually have more time, have more freedom? um, you know, I don't want to brag or I don't want to sound boastful, but I love time management. I'm great at it. I'm hardly ever late. If I'm late, I'm letting them know in advance. I get a lot of stuff done and I have a lot of peace of mind. I have a lot of free time. I have space in my calendar. I can do what I want to do most of the time. I went snowboarding this morning and I had a full day of work and I dealt with, you know, uh, taking my daughter to school and dealing with insurance. So I get a lot of stuff done. And it's really, I only have a few strategies that I've mastered, and I'm going to share 3 of them with you today. One of them we went over last week. So there's 4 fundamental core strategies that have become habits for me. They're second nature to me. One is intentional goal setting. And I do intentional goal setting annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily. It's a habit. It's not just something I do once in a while. Chris, can you hear us? Yes. Success. All right. So one of the core things that I do is intentional goal setting, and I'll put this in the chat for you. And also that if you missed that workshop, there's a recording and you can go listen to it, and there's a worksheets and workshop and everything. So number 1 is intentional goal setting. And it's not just a once a year annual, New Year's resolution I stick in the drawer. It's something that's a habit for me, weekly, daily, monthly. The second thing is time blocking. And that's what we're going to focus on today, called creating your ideal week. Having a structure for your ideal week. That's one of our focuses today. And then another thing that I do that really gives me peace of mind is called a mind dump. So we're going to also talk about that today. And the last thing is breaking it down to like the daily productivity stuff is what are your daily action plan? And I have a system for getting stuff done on a micro level. So you got the macro all the way down to the micro. And we're going to be focusing today on 3 areas. We're going to be focusing on some principles and kind of like philosophies, like philosophical viewpoint, even like mindset. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some how-to strategies and tactics and systems. So specifically like what I do, how to do it. You're going to walk away with some tools that you can use. Simple stuff. And then the third thing is really most important is developing routines and habits. And so that's important. And I love this quote from Aristotle. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." Because anyone can be on time once in a while. Anyone can follow up once in a while. Anyone can, set goals once in a while, but to make it part of your being, your identity, who you are, and it's just part of how you show up, that's where you get the big payoff. Okay. So we're going to focus on all 3 principles, strategies, and habits. So let's dive into a few principles first, and then we'll get into the worksheets and some of the actions. So one of the first principles that I would like to share with you is, who's heard of multitasking? Show of hands, right? How many feels like you're good at multitasking? Okay, good. I'm happy to see that, Lori, because you know what? Multitasking sucks. Forget multitasking. It is one of the biggest time wasters. We're going to talk about the opposite of multitasking today. We're going to talk about time blocking, about getting focused. How many of you ever been on a roll where you're just in the zone and you're flowing and like, boom, you're just choo, 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 choo. It could be in lots of ways. It could be in sports. It could be washing dishes. It could be making phone calls. It could be doing your taxes. But you get into a zone and you get into flow. And when you're in that flow, what you don't want to be is distracted, right? Multitasking is like juggling so many things that you're never grounded, you're never focused. So multitasking sucks. We're going to do the opposite of that today. Second fundamental principle is the 80-20 rule. This is a time-tested principle that goes back forever. If you've ever been in business or sales, you know about it. 80% of your success comes from 20% of your actions. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your clients. 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your investments. 80%, it's just an 80-20 rule. It's kind of a universal principle. It just happens. It's like super, super predictable. Another fundamental principle is like, I put this on a post the other day. What would you rather do? Get a lot of stuff done, A, or B, get your top priorities done, right? It's priorities. So really what we're going to talk about is we're talking about priorities, and what that requires is a skill called saying no. Learning how to say no to what's not a priority is a skill. It's a mindset too, because, sometimes we say yes to things out of fear of letting someone down, fear of, not got to be a people pleaser, fear of, missing out, FOMO. But learning how to say no is a fundamental skill and a principle that I really want you to keep in mind. And then the last couple, number 4 is the KISS principle. And that means to keep it super simple. I think that one of the reasons why I feel like I'm great at time management is because I keep my life simple. I don't overcomplicate things. So I'm going to really focus today on keeping it simple for you and giving you tools that are simple. They don't require a lot of fancy training or fancy software or, yes, there's productivity tools and there's dictators and there's apps and all that. I'm going to keep it simple. 8.5 by 11, 3 by 5 card, pen. I mean, this is going to be simple, but it's also something that becomes a habit. And then once you get installed that habit, then you can rock and roll. All right. And then these are a couple phrases. I'm going to put it under the mindset, but I'm going to put these in the chat for you. These are just things that you will hear me and lots of people who are really good with their calendar, with time management. Here's some of the things they will say. They will say, I live by my calendar. I love planning. And then there's the last one is there's 3 parts to every event. There's the prep, whether it's a, Chris and Scott are both personal trainers. If you want to have a phenomenal training session, you need to have a great plan going and you need to prep. You need to be present and rock and roll during the event. And you need to have some follow-up and cleanup. If I'm going to yoga, there's at least 3 steps. There's me prepping for that, getting my gear, making sure I schedule myself drive time to get there. That's all prep. Then yoga starts at 6 o'clock. It's over at 7. But then there's some follow-up. I got to drive home. I got to wash my clothes. So there's always 3 parts, minimum of 3 parts to an event: the prep, the actual event itself, and then the follow-up and the cleanup. So think about that. When you're scheduling, how many of you ever forget to put the drive time in? How many of you ever forget that, oh my gosh, and that leads to stress, that leads to overwhelm, it leads to being late, it leads to being like getting there and not being present for the event. So these are some principles we're going to talk about today. So you guys ready to take charge of your calendar, ready to become your CEO? All right, Whitney's ready, Lori's ready. I can't see the others, but I'm just going to assume you're ready. And I would love it if you can stay on camera because, like I said, I want to keep this really interactive. I want this to be fun. I don't want this to be heavy. I want this to be light. I want you to be able to ask questions. Chris, I love your background, by the way. Super cool. Where are you?
I'm in Rayleigh's One Lounge. It's like an upstairs bar area.
Nice. Nice. I love it. Looks good. All right, so here we go. We're going to dive into, like I said, let me put those links in here again. If you need them, ideally, there's 2 worksheets. There's a lot of Optavia coaches use this process. A lot of people, Optavia coaches, will be watching this video. So we have 2 versions. We have a coach version, which is on a Google Doc, has more details, and then the generic version, which is simplified a little bit, and that could be for a client, it could be for a non-coach, it could be for anyone who's doing a personal kind of time management goal setting. So first of all, the first step in the process is making sure you have the tools. All right. So you need a legal pad or the worksheet. You're going to need a pen or pencil. You need some 3x5 cards, and you're going to want to have your Google Calendar connected to your phone. You want to have this synced through Google. This is a very common thing. You can sync your iPhone calendar with Google, and you want to have that so you can put an appointment in Google or into your iPhone, and it'll sync up automatically either way. That's super important, and that's free. So hopefully everyone has Google Calendar. Next is we're going to go through the process. And the first thing in the process is always knowing, what are my goals? Like, why would I even need to manage time? I got this quote on here. It says, if you don't know where you're going, then any path will get you there. So having a goal is going to be a prerequisite because then you don't know your priorities that you're trying to manage. So if you're with Optavia, we're going to do something called take aim. And what that means is awaken your intrinsic motivation. That's what AIM stands for, awaken intrinsic motivation. So for Optavia coaches, Chris, do you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick. So you said that there's 2 worksheets. The one that I ended up printing out, I believe, is the Optavia one. And then in the chat, the discussion area on the Facebook page is, it says, here's the generic worksheet for folks not coaches with Optavia. But when you click on that, it says that no preview available, file is in owner's trash.
Oh,
So
weird.
I'm not even able to look at that one.
Okay, can you look at the chat? If you go into the chat, I just put the links there for the generic one. And you should be able to pull that up and you can follow along and print it out later.
There we go. Okay.
Sorry about that. I'll have to fix. Thanks for letting me know. I'll fix that link. All right. So for Optavia coaches, this is pretty common. We've taken AIM. You've heard Dr. A talk about it. AIM stands for Awaken Intrinsic Motivation. What you're going to be looking at is you're going to look at your next level goal with the business. So you're going from senior coach to executive director, from executive director to fully integrated business coach, or from fully integrated business coach to fully integrated business leader. So what's important here is you write down not only that goal, but why is it important to you? And by when will you have it done? Now, if you're not an Optavia coach, you're going to be doing a little bit of a different assessment. And what you're going to look at is you're going to look at your well-being. Now, some of you have been on the call we did last week where we did the well-being assessment, where you looked at your healthy body, healthy mind, and healthy finances, and you got your scores. So you probably have some goals already, which is important. But what we want to do is I want to do a little exercise with you. So take out a piece of paper or on the back of the worksheet, on a blank part of the worksheet, I want you to do a little exercise with me. First thing you're going to do is you're going to write sleep. And then right next to that, you're going to write how many hours a night you sleep. We're going to do a little exercise to check in with what you currently do with your 168 hours that you get in a week. So we get 168 hours a week. Let's kind of do a little assessment of what we do with that time. So first one is sleep. We, put how many hours a week you sleep and then multiply that times 7. And then that'll give you a total number. That's the first step. Second step is workout or fitness. How many hours a week do you do on your fitness, your exercise, your activity? And you're trying to get a weekly number. So if it's like, 1 hour a day, then you put that down. Next is any other personal care. I do breath work every day for an hour. So I would have 7 hours a week for breath work. Do you do meditation? Do you do self-care? These are important things. These are big boulders, right? Next thing to put in there would be your spiritual time. Do you go to church, on Wednesday night and Sunday? What are your spiritual commitments? And how many hours per week is that? Next is we're going to do family. What's your family time or your social time? So put family and social, and then how many hours per week does that turn out to be? And finally, let's finish up with your business, your career. How many hours a week do you work your business? Now, take all those numbers, pull out a calculator or add them up manually, and figure out how many hours that totals up. Sleep, fitness, activity, social, spiritual, family, and work. And how many hours did you get? And put it in the chat if you would. How many hours are you investing to those big categories?
Hey, Greg, real fast. I think I might have missed one. What was there something between sleep and self-care?
Fitness.
Thank you.
Yep. And put in the chat, how many hours are you investing in those big chunks or what we would call priorities, right? Would you all agree those are big priorities? 119. 117. Okay, now the next fun part. Keep doing that. So once you're done calculating how many hours you're currently using, now subtract that from 168. So Whitney's got about 40 hours unaccounted for. Lori's got about 43 hours unaccounted for. 51 for you, Lori. Is that your number? Okay. Oh, yeah, because it's 168. Okay, forgot this. Yeah, I was doing by 60. So now I should say unaccounted for, but here's the reality. nature abhors a vacuum. So if you don't plan it, something will come up and grab your attention. And that's one of our next exercises, is looking at all the distractions, all the things that are not super intentional, but grab our time, steal our time, suck our time, our energy. Okay. But before we do that, we want to do this other exercise, which is figuring out what your time is worth. What is your time worth? So one way to think about that is not like, you know, psychologically or philosophically, it's actually, okay, what do I get paid per hour? So figure out if you know your hourly rate, if you know that you make, $50 an hour, $100 an hour, if you know what that is, do it. If you're with Optavia, it's a little more complicated because you're going to have to figure out your total monthly income. Then you're going to have to divide that by 4. And then you're going to have to divide that by the number of hours you work your Optavia business per week. But what you want to get to is you want to get to a hourly rate of what you earn, either your job. And if you have both, put them both down. Like if you have a day job and you work Optavia, because I would love for you to compare that. Usually when I do this with coaches, one of the big breakthroughs is they'll see that they're making, 2 or 3 times what they make with their day job with Optavia, because it's very lucrative and it also has leverage. It has residual income. So once you know what your hourly rate is, here's something.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry, Greg, thanks.
Sure.
Can you go through the equation again? So we take the number of hours we work a week or
actually
a day?
It's on the worksheet, but I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even see the worksheet.
I'll put it in the chat. Basically, you start with your monthly income. So you would add up your bonus, your weekly incomes. You have to add up all of your income for the month. Then you divide that by 4, which 4 weeks in a month. And then you divide that by the number of weeks, the number of hours per week you work. So if you work 35 hours a week, that'll give you your hourly income. Now, compare that, as I said, to your day job, but also think about this. When we talk about our next thing is we're going to talk about delete and delegate and things like that. If you make $100 an hour and you're spending 5 hours a week, I'll give you a great example. My hourly income is pretty high because I make, 6 figures. But if I were to do like all the shoveling that's required to live up here in the mountain, if I did all the shoveling myself, I would have no time for my business. So I hire people to shovel for me. I hire people to do house chores for me because I don't have to do that. So if you know how much you make per hour, sometimes it makes sense to delegate responsibilities to people who you can pay a lot less. If you can pay somebody $20 an hour to clean your house, and that takes 4 hours a week, that frees up for you, and you're making $100 an hour, the net is pretty good. You're making $400 extra hours, but you have to be what? Productive. You have to be focused with your time. So knowing what your time is worth also hopefully will make you be a little more responsible and not waste it. Because if an hour of your time is worth $100, then, well, scrolling costs you $100 an hour. Netflix costs you $100 an hour. Podcasts where you're not doing anything else, if you're not exercising or driving or whatever, costs you $100 an hour. So you might think I'm investing in myself, I'm getting smarter, but realize if you're making $100 an hour, better be thoughtful about what you're doing. Tarot, there you go. $100 an hour, maybe 200. So realizing what you're doing and where your money's going and where your time is going and just being aware of it. It's like, you can't, here's another principle that I should have mentioned, is you can't improve what you don't measure. So if you're not tracking your time, if you don't know where your money's going, you don't know where your time is going, you're just floating. You don't have much chance of getting better, of improving. If you don't measure, you can't improve. So by doing these exercises, it's a bit of a wake-up call, but it's super good for us, okay? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the worksheet, and I'm going to actually share my screen here so you guys can see this here. All right, let's go here and share screen. And
I'm just adding up with all the conversations that I have in the middle of the day with girlfriends or somebody who pops in the middle of my day. It's quite painful. I got to start turning my phone off.
yeah. Well, it's time management. It's blocking time. So you can do that. You can block your time and you can say, hey, this is the time I have for socializing. We're going to get to that. We're going to definitely get to that. But we're going to right now talk about eliminating waste and creating space. Okay. And so some of you that were on the goal setting workshop, you've already done this, is what are your 3 to 5 biggest time wasters? But here's what also is, what's a good replacement? So instead of watching Netflix, I can read a book. Instead of scrolling, I can post, because posting is productive. Scrolling is consuming. Am I creating content and having conversations and engaging with people? Or am I scrolling and just getting sucked into the black hole? So take a few minutes. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about what are your 3 to 5 biggest time wasters. Probably pretty intuitive to you. Probably know what your biggest time sucks are. And if you want, if you already know what they are because you did the goal setting workshop, you can rewrite them here, or you can just post a couple of them in the chat. I'd love to hear, what are your biggest time wasters, your biggest consumers of time? Okay. Now, one way to know if it's a time waster is, do you feel energized after doing it or depleted? So there's an energetic piece. There's also a psychological piece. Do you feel proud of yourself? Do you feel accomplished? I notice when I check something off my to-do list that is like on purpose, I get a boost of energy. It's like I get a little shot of confidence. Yeah, I said I was going to do something. I did it. It's like I'm making a deposit into my own personal integrity account. So thinking about your biggest time wasters and what would you replace it with, let's open up and let's hear from a few people. And then we're going to talk about, once you identify time wasters, there are some strategies that Stephen Covey talks about. I'd like to talk about the 4Ds. But before we do, let's just hear from a few people. What are your biggest time wasters, and who'd be willing to share a time waster? And if you do, ideally, what's your replacement? What's a better thing to do with your time? So who'd be willing to come off mute and share?
For me, really, scrolling is just number one for sure. Way too much time consuming, not enough time creating. I could definitely be spending more time like going through some old, workout videos or something and just posting stuff, even if it's old. I feel like I often have a bit of a, perfectionist mindset. So if it's not like the new video with the better angle and the right clothes on and all of that stuff, then I don't, put in, I'm like, oh, like it's not good enough then. So I'm just not going to do it. So I just consume instead.
Yeah. Let me give you a little mindset shift that a lot of, I'm in some masterminds with social media, and specifically these guys are like investing millions of dollars in studying, what's working, what's not working, algorithms, all that stuff. And you know what works way better than a produced video, Chris? An authentic selfie, a simple video. The people want to hear you. They don't want overly produced stuff. That stuff gets scanned by. People don't stop. And if you want to if you want to scroll stop, it's more about like hitting them with a problem and making it real and authentic, and get to the point. You got to get to the point within the first, got to get to that problem and get to the point within the first, he's camera shy. I love it. Well, that's a mindset you're going to want to let go of and work on that, because you're great on camera. Okay. So anyone else? What are some other time wasters?
I'll go.
Go for it, Lori.
Okay, so yeah, like you posting instead of scrolling, that's a big one for me. Watching recordings of the Habits of Health community instead of watching reels on Facebook, that's just dumb.
Mhm.
Reading instead of doing puzzles. I've taken up doing puzzles, and I should be reading instead of working on a puzzle.
Great. Good. Love it. So sometimes it's easy to just flip it and say the opposite of this is this. If scrolling is the time waster, what's the opposite? Posting. Sometimes you can just flip it and go to the opposite. Sometimes you're going to just take that time and say, okay, instead of doing this, I'm going to invest it into something else, like talking to people, starting conversations, talking to clients, asking for referrals, doing something that's on purpose for your goals. Again, all this whole time management is in the context of how do I manage my day, my calendar, my energy to reach these top 4 goals that I have: healthy body, healthy mind, healthy finances, healthy spirit. Okay, so now that we've looked at some of the time wasters, we're going to look at the Stephen Covey strategy. I'm going to put I'll put the link in here so you guys can come back. You can save the chat and you can check it out and go into more detail. But Stephen Covey's one of my heroes. And Purdue has this document. If you click on, I'll share my screen so you don't have to. But basically, there is a 4 quadrants that Covey talks about. And the 4 quadrants are urgent, not urgent, important, not important. So quadrant 1, the idea is if it's urgent and important, do it. So there's the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds are do it, delay it, delegate it, or delete it. So for example, if something is important and urgent, you can't delete it. And if it's super urgent, you probably might not be able to delay it. Sometimes you can delegate it. Sometimes you can say, hey, this is important and urgent. Can you send this out for me? You have an assistant, you have, a wife, you have a friend, you can delegate it to somebody else. If it's quadrant 4, it's not urgent and not important. That's where you delete it. That's the time wasters. That's the busy work. That's the procrastination. That's the stuff you want to get rid of. So the 2 big and easy ones to identify is what's urgent and important and what's not urgent and not important. So keep an eye on those. In the middle, you've got quadrant 2, which is it's not urgent, but it's important. This is long-term planning. This is studying. This is sharpening your axe. This is getting ready. This is super important because if you don't get ready, you show up unprepared and unprofessional, but it's not urgent. So it's easy to procrastinate on or not do or skip. But I want to say that what Stephen Covey says in his book, he says, by completing the work in quadrant 2, this is going to be the biggest thing that's going to give you balance, control, and a feeling of success in your life. Because the more time you spend in quadrant 2, the less problems you'll have, the less urgent crises you'll have. If you don't spend time in quadrant 2, you will constantly putting out fires and have crises. Okay. So another quadrant 3 is interruptions. These are not important, but urgent. So somebody walks into your room, they're there, it's urgent, but what they're bringing you is not important, right? So you want to try to avoid that. You might need to put in boundaries. You need to have strategies to avoid distractions, to avoid interruptions. Some of these things that are not important but feel urgent would be like you're invited to something. If you're a people pleaser and you can't say no, and you're constantly being invited to stuff and you keep saying yes, but you're not doing things that are on purpose for your higher self, you're in quadrant 3. So again, 2 best places to be are quadrant 1 and 2. And definitely pay attention to quadrant 4, those time wasters, and get rid of them. And these are the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds, once again, are do it, delay it, which is schedule it, put it in your calendar, delegate it to somebody else, or delete it. And I try to practice all of those. And I'm actually pretty good at them. All right. So we've talked about, we're now on step 3. We've gone through the eliminations. Now we're going to move on to step 4. Step 4 is that key strategy called creating your ideal week. There's a couple ways to do this. I've outlined them on the worksheets. So one way to do it, which is just take a legal pad and write along the top, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Draw some lines straight down. On the left, draw some lines and put your time. Start whatever, 6 a.m. and keep going. Now, you can do that with just drawing it out. And I actually enjoy doing that, drawing out my week. But there's also some worksheets. This one here is a worksheet Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's perfect for me because I wake up around 6 and I go to bed around 11. So this one is really nice for me. I'll use this a lot. Whitney's got hers done on a notepad, it looks like. And then there's this other one that I just found online. It's a little simpler. I like this one. And I have the link here. I'll put the link in the chat for you in case you are watching. But this is, again, Sunday through Saturday. Have the date of the week. On the left, you put your times. I think Whitney and I went through this last week when we were doing her schedule. This one's nice. But for me, it doesn't go long enough. Doesn't give me enough hours. So you have to I like to break it into half an hour points. So this worksheet really works well for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to let me put the link in there for those of you that are interested in getting that other form. You can either just print out the ones we have, you can enlarge them, you can use a yellow pad, whatever you want. But the idea is we want to create a template. The other way to do it is actually in Google Calendar. You can set up a new calendar, add a new calendar, title it My Ideal Week, and then you can create from there. But let me go through a few principles here first, a few things to keep in mind, concepts when it comes to calendaring your week. So the first big concept I mentioned earlier is called blocking time. The idea about blocking time is you're going to do one single activity. I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to do my client support. I'm going to do follow-ups. I'm going to do social media. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to spend time with, Jazzy. It's date night or, whatever. So you're blocking time for one specific activity and you're going to put boundaries in to protect that time from not getting distracted. So how effective would it be if I'm on date night with Jazzy and all I'm doing is doing client calls the whole time? That's not date night. That's rude. How about going to dinner and, being on your phone the whole time? So blocking time is a way of being focused and productive and present. And you're going to get more stuff done and you're going to have more fun. So blocking time for certain activities. Smallest block of time that I typically use is 15 minutes. But, usually it's a half an hour to an hour works really, really well. I kind of don't like to go more than an hour. I like to have a little break in between. So I'm not sitting, if I'm at a computer, I don't want to do an hour's worth of, I don't want to do more than an hour's worth of phone calls. I want to get up, I want to move. Plus the way my routine is I like to eat every 2 to 3 hours. So I'm constantly fueling myself. So I need to get up, move my body. That way I'm not stagnant. So block times can be anywhere between 15 minutes and maybe an hour and a half, but I try to avoid going longer than 60 to 90 minutes. The next key concept to understand is, I mentioned this, creating space. If you create space in your calendar, then you will avoid overwhelm and you won't be doing so many multitasking. So creating space is something I intentionally do. I never pack my calendar so full that it becomes stressful or overwhelming. I like to give myself breaks in between, drive times. I never do back to back. I always give myself at least 15 minutes between appointments so I can do my follow-up and my cleanup and make sure I make notes for my clients, etc. The next concept I want to share is called store hours. This is mostly for entrepreneurs, but it's also true if you're an employee. So if you're an employee, you have a schedule, business wants you there at 9, they send you home at 5, right? But as an entrepreneur, you kind of need to have something similar to that, because it's easy if you work from home to burn yourself out just to keep working all night long. And that's just not good for you. So you want to have I'll start my day at this time. For me, I don't take appointments earlier than 9 a.m. and I don't take appointments later than 7 p.m. So those are my store hours that I'm like booking my Optavia business. So you might want to think about that, because the idea here for taking charge of your week is to create a lifestyle. Just like we did with our goals, we thought about what's the ideal lifestyle we want to have. Well, if you're the CEO of your calendar, you're the CEO of your schedule, then you're the one that's either making it fun or making it stressful. So if you can decide, now it may not be, I'll say, here's another principle that I should put in there, is I am super structured, but I'm also flexible. Like stuff happens. Like I might have the ideal day planned out, but then something breaks or a storm comes and I have to change everything. So I can move things around based on what's important, but I have a template, I have a target, I have a game plan going in. So I know what my ideal week is. So I know I have time for yoga, I have time for snowboarding, I have time for date nights. I have that stuff blocked in advance. So same with your schedule for your work. You should have some store hours. So once you have your store hours, like the doors open at this, they close at this time. Another thing is called prime time. And what prime time is there's two ways of doing this. Prime time could be when you're best, when your mind is working at its best. For example, I'm not going to be super creative after 8 p.m. I'm going to be a little tired. I'm going to be run down, right? But I also think about when's the best time for me to reach out and connect with people. So prime time has two categories. What's best for me and my energy and my state of mind? And also, when can I connect with my clients? Because, most people, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to have clients, you need to follow up, you're doing coaching, you're doing stuff like that. So you need to know, okay, I'm not going to catch anyone at 7 a.m. So that's not the time where I'm going to book prospecting, or I'm not going to book follow-ups, right? But I could do social media, from, 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, because that's posting and they'll see it when they see it. So prime time has to do with when you're at your prime and when it's the best time to reach people. Okay. So keep that in mind. So think about that. What are your prime times for your business? So think about that. Chris, I bet you have prime times for when your clients are mostly available. When do they tend to want to do workouts? And also think about this, Chris. I want to challenge you, because if your only response to them, if you always say yes to the time they ask for, then you're going to lose control of your calendar. So being kind of intentional and thinking about that could be really helpful. What are your prime times, Chris?
Well, I currently really only have one client, so it varies. It's generally between like 4 and 6 o'clock is when we train, kind of, what works for his schedule. So, I mean, really right now, my schedule is just kind of all over the place and fluctuates. And I'm in this because I do need more structure, because that prime time for me currently needs to be the, working on the business side rather than working in the business. So,
Yeah, building your business, building your client base.
building it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So
So think about that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything yet.
Well, see, you're similar to Optavia. Optavia, like the prime time for Optavia is not in the early mornings. We don't catch people in the mornings. We'll catch them at lunchtime, afternoon, early evening. That's when they're available to chat. And we do coaching, so we need to be on the phone or on the Zoom. But early mornings are great for getting other things done, social media. So there's different kinds of prospecting. There's like marketing, which is you're putting it out there, you're creating content, you're trying to build your list, you're doing those things. And then there's getting on the phone and meeting, or maybe meeting with someone. Hey, sounds like we could be a good fit. Let's meet for lunch. Let's meet for coffee. And now you're sitting in more of a sales environment where you're enrolling them. So same with us, who's like, we do start conversations on social media. Then we set up a phone call. We do a health assessment. Then from the health assessment, we enroll them and then we get them started. And then we work out a schedule with them on when their check-in is, or when their weekly appointment is. So you might find different clients. If they're professionals, then you might find getting them during the 9 to 5 is going to be a little harder for you. Maybe it might be a weekend warrior, or might be an afternoon guy, or maybe a lunchtime person, So you'll find these times as you get more exposure, but you're going to want to figure out what is your prime time to reach clients and connect with them. Okay. And then, the last thing I just want to share is like, a good rule of thumb is if you're more than one business, if you're like part-time, you have a day job, then you're working your Optavia business around that. Or if you're, starting a new entrepreneur business and you're starting it, rule of thumb is to keep the momentum going is make sure that you touch your business every day. Good rule of thumb is to make sure you touch your business every day, that you move it forward. It's like a garden. If you don't tend the garden, the weeds will take over. And so if you want to be consistent and you want to build momentum, touch your business every day. Okay. All right. So now, as a homework assignment, what I would like you to do is look at your last couple weeks and look at what has been the blocks of time. What's been your pattern? You don't have to write it out, but just glance back at it and look at where have I spent my time? Where are the big chunks, the big boulders? Because now we're going to go into this next stage, which is designing your ideal week, which is step 5. So step 5, using that worksheet or just a 3x5 pad, or you can even go online, like I said, and you can open up a new calendar. I like doing it on paper first, because then I get to kind of see it and step back, and then I insert it into the technology. But basically, we're going to start talking about what I call the big boulders, or your top priorities, or also non-negotiables. So put in the chat, what are some of your non-negotiables, things that you need to have for you to be your best? What are some things that are non-negotiables, that are boulders, they're priorities, critical for you to have a healthy, balanced life? Time to eat well. Yes. It's huge for you. Pickleball. Yes. Prayer and exercise, meditation, exercise, food. Yeah, I love it. Snowboarding. Yes. Now for me, snowboarding, Chris, it's a variable. Now what I'll do is I'll look at the forecast. Like today I went snowboarding because it snowed like heck yesterday and it was a blue sunny day. So I cleared my calendar so I could have the morning and catch the fresh. I'm also booked to go snowboarding on Sunday because same thing. It's going to snow on Saturday. It's going to clear up on Sunday. So I don't put snowboarding in the calendar. That's something that I work with nature, but I create space for it because I have my other routines, and my other routines are negotiable, and I get to choose how to shift those things around. Does that make sense? But one thing that's non-negotiable for me is my morning routine. Couple days a week, I drive Jazzy to school. So that's my priority. I wake up early for that. But then no matter what day of the week is, I have my breath work, and I block out time for my breath work, block out time for my morning routine. So I will say this, if there were only 2 things that you got really good at blocking and managing and really being responsible for, it would be your twilight hour, the 1 hour before you go to bed, and the first hour that you wake up, even if you have to wake up extra early. Because if you control those 2 of the 24 hours, the other 22 seem to rock and roll. So on your list here, step 5, it says, healthy body. Let's put in some big blocks there. We mentioned it, fitness, exercise, eating, things like that. So you want to make sure that you have a strategy for doing that, your sleep. But the 2 big ones, the twilight hour and your model morning or your morning routine. So when you get to your weekly calendar, if you have a routine like I do, put it in there. So for me, if you go to the, let me share my screen here. I can go to my calendar and I can bring up my ideal calendar, my optimal week. Oh, wait a second. There it goes. And I'm going to get rid of these other ones. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here and you guys will see what I'm talking about. And you can do this by just going to Google, making your own calendar, making a new calendar, calling it your ideal week. Oops. There you go. Wrong button. There we go. So this is on the day view. Let me see if I can switch it to the week view here. Let me go to week. Okay. So this little calendar here is my ideal week. And you can create one of these for yourself. Oops, sorry. So wake up, meditate, have a shake, get my fuelings going. I do Power Hour, which is a social media block where I'm actually posting on social media. That's 8 to 9 every morning. I have a team meeting with one of my partners. I do an afternoon Power Hour. So I'm following up with people. I'm following up with messages. I'm doing the follow-up. So I stir the pot in the morning and I wrap it up in the afternoon. I have my yoga scheduled throughout the week. Date night is usually Thursday night with Jazzy and Saturday night with Marina, and then family time on Sunday. And every Sunday night, Marina and I have a weekly review where we review things, and then on the monthly calendar we review our we review our goals for the month. So having that strategy now, if I were to take this and I were to include my team wellness appointments, you can see these other appointments that show up. The ideal week is something that I don't really use. That's like a template. Does that make sense? That's just like my template for what I shoot for. But then what I do is I make those appointments reoccurring in my calendar. So like the morning workout and the morning meditation, that pops up as a reoccurring appointment every day. So let's go through how do you structure. Let's talk about structuring your ideal week. We've already talked about your body, your sleep, your eating, your exercise, your evening and morning routine. Now put in, and let's do this right now while we're here. Let's put in on your ideal week some family time. So when is your family time? Do you have date nights? If you don't, I highly recommend them. What about your personal development, your spiritual development, your church time? Put those in. Now, this is not a real week. I want to say this is an ideal week. And by definition, ideal is not real. It's a figment of our imagination. It's what if everything went perfect, what your week would look like. The same with your day and your month and your year. You might have an ideal year and an ideal week, but life happens. Snowstorms come, cars break down, things change, people move. But this ideal gives you a template. So what we want to do is we want to start getting these most important boulders in your calendar. Those of you that are with Optavia know about Dr. Ray's use of the mason jar story. There's a story, maybe Scott, Chris, you probably may have heard it as well. There's a teacher teaching a college class, and he had this mason jar, and he had these 4 other jars. He had a jar of big rocks, small rocks, sand, and water. Do you know what story I'm talking about, Chris? And if you don't put those big rocks in if you put the big rocks in, you can put the boulders in, you can put the gravel in, you can put the sand in, and you can put the water, and you can get it all in that one jar. But if you put the water or the sand or the pebbles in first, you don't have room for the boulders. So you have to put the boulders in first. In this metaphor, the boulders are your non-negotiables, your top priorities. So you have to put those in first. That's why I said, if you only got 3 things done in a day, but they were your 3 top priorities, you'd feel pretty good. You'd say, okay, I got some more stuff to do, but I got my big boulders done, So first of all, you got to know what your boulders are. Then you got to put them in your calendar. Then you got to honor it. So let's put in those boulders. So write in, when is your family time? When is your date night? When is your social time? Do you go dancing on Sunday? Do you do, do you have a weekly review? I highly recommend Sunday night's a great time to do a weekly review. to plan your week, review last week, get ready for the upcoming week? Do you have any church activities that are regular? And if so, if it's weekly, put it in as a reoccurring appointment weekly. If it's daily, put it in daily. If it's monthly, have it be a monthly reoccurring appointment. And then we're going to do the same for our healthy finances. So the things that go into that category are going to be your day job, your hours at work, your Optavia hours, maybe, prospecting time, follow-up time, appointment time, hosting events. I go to networking events. Those are in my calendar. I like to go to those networking events. I put those in there. We also have some team trainings that we do that are regular the first Monday of every month, the first Friday of every month, every Monday night at 5:30. We have, so we have these routines that are ongoing that I have in my calendar as reoccurring appointments. I showed you that one power hour, that social media time. I do that in the morning and the afternoon pretty religiously, like very rarely, except for today when I'm snowboarding, I didn't do it because I want to be first up on those lifts. All right, let me check in with you guys. I want to give you plenty of time to do this. There's no rush, but I want you, more than anything, I want you to understand the process and understand the thinking and the dynamics. Are there any questions about putting these priorities into your calendar, into your weekly calendar? This is your ideal week. So Chris, you've got a job where you're teaching, right? Is your schedule set or does it change every week?
I currently work part-time at Palisades, but I'm like set to 2 days per week, but I often get called off just because it's a slow year. It's not necessarily money that I like count on or rely on. So it's hard to really count that.
But those 2
Like I
days,
said,
those 2 days are preset.
yeah, so it's like my days are Friday and Saturday. I'm not gonna get scheduled the rest of the week. If I'm gonna get scheduled, it's gonna be that Friday or Saturday, but I often get called off.
Okay. Okay.
So I do tend to just like, whether or not I know I'm working, I am blocking that time off from other stuff, just anticipating just in case I work.
Perfect. Perfect. And then if you don't, then you have opportunity to fill that with priorities.
Totally. Yeah. More fun. Generally is what I've been doing. Some more fun.
I love it. All right. So just be intentional and put those big boulders in there. Family, fun, health, fitness, social, spiritual. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't do, I know Marina has a CEO day once a month. We do like a family financial block once a week where we're checking in on bills. It'd be a good idea to put some financial management block either weekly or monthly, minimum monthly, where you're actually checking in and making sure your financial stuff is being handled. Okay. Any other ideas for blocks that we haven't mentioned? Important priorities. You can either come off mute or you can share it in the chat. What other blocks?
Well, I don't know if it's not an extra block, but for me, like I have down, for example, like outside time, I have hobbies, I have movement, which a lot of times those can be all one thing. Like that's all snowboarding in one day, so it's kind of like depending on what I'm doing, I can, kind of knock out multiple things with one stone.
Great. I love that. And those would all probably come under like self-care and fitness and things that really invigorate your body. So they're good for you psychologically and physically. And whenever you can, there's only one, and I don't really call it multitasking, but I call it like leveraging time is like when I'm on the ski slopes and I'm talking to somebody on a lift and we talk about what do you do for work, like networking. You can network on the lift. You can, you can exchange phone numbers. You can make friends on Facebook. You can start conversations. So whenever you can leverage your time, like driving is a great time to leverage, where you can maybe make a follow-up phone call, or you can, if you've got a long commute. I just drove back from Nevada City the other day, and I got a chance to make some phone calls that I needed to make. I had my list of people that I wanted to talk to, and I banged out a few phone calls. Chantel says, now I try to schedule walks with friends instead of going to lunch. Yes, that's a great example. Kind of catch two butterflies with one net, you know? Take them out on a walk, get a little exercise. Family time, that's a great way to do, combining some quality time with your family. Do something active, go skiing, go snowboarding, go for a walk, go for a hike. Okay, good. So whenever you can leverage your time and you can do something that is involving, you're present with that person, but you're doing something together, that's a good thing. Okay, so now once we have your week kind of mapped out, let's go to the worksheet. And then the next step is to put it in your digital calendar as a repeating, even if you did like I did, like I made that ideal calendar, that's not the calendar I work from. That's just a template that I can view when I want to. The red calendar, which is my Optavia and my family time, I have different appointments. Like I have one for home, one for family, one for Optavia, and then I have I think those are the main ones. And I have them different colors. So I have my appointments color coded. I know if it's yellow, it's a family appointment. If it's red, it's Optavia. If it's blue, it's fun. It's play. So I have my different kind of color coded calendars, but I can see them all in one glance. And any of those appointments that are reoccurring, like, my date night with Jazzy is a reoccurring appointment. So it's Thursday night. My check-in with Marina is Sunday night, so it's a reoccurring weekly appointment or daily appointment or monthly appointment. So put those big chunks in your calendar. Those are the boulders. Then you can go back and you can put the gravel in. You can say, oh, here's a special thing I need to do. Oh, I need to call my, insurance agent. Oh, I need to do something else. So you can put those specialty ones in week by week. And I usually do that on Sunday. And I look ahead and I say, okay, what are my important little things I need to get done? And these next two strategies that we're going to go over will also help you fill in the pebbles and the sand and the water to get that mason jar so you have a full and effective and productive life. Okay, any questions on the big boulders and blocking out time? Everyone's good? Okay, let's go to the next section. The next thing is tending the garden. Step number 7 is tending the garden. And I call that my mind dump. And this is a very, very powerful, very, very powerful thing. The way I describe it is, if you have ever had a hard time getting to sleep at night, or if you feel like you're overwhelmed and you've got so much to do and you don't even know where to start, and all you do is you just glass over and you procrastinate because there's just so much to do. Think of it like this. Think of it as like you're on your computer and you've got 10 different apps open and 10 different web pages open, and you've got all this scattered stuff, and it's eating up all of your RAM, your random access memory. It's eating up all of your presence. It's taking so much energy to like, okay, where do I start? So the idea with the mind dump is you take a pad of paper. I usually use 8.5 by 11 legal size paper. And I put the words mind dump at the top, and I put the date. And here's the idea, is get everything that's on your mind out of your mind and on that piece of paper. Just dump it. All your to-dos, all your actions, all your goals, all the emails you're supposed, just get it out and get it on paper and dump it out there. And when you're doing that, what you get to do is you get to separate from it. You get to zone out and not zone out. You get to zoom out and see like what's important. And you get to also see patterns. So once you zoom out and you've got all this stuff dumped out of your paper, out of your mind, it's this great time to do this is at night before you go to bed. And what it's equivalent to is by getting it out of your mind, it's kind of like closing that window, closing that app, and it frees up. It doesn't use as much battery. It doesn't use as much RAM. And all of a sudden now you're focused, right? Because you get it out of your mind and you don't have to think about it because guess what? It's captured. It'll be there when you look for it. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there the next day because you've got it. You can shut down your mind. But then you want to do is you want to prioritize. So then what I do is I circle the 10 most important things on that list. And I'm saying, okay, I got my mind up. I'm doing it out at nighttime. I'm looking ahead the next day. Okay, here's the 10 most important things I need to do. I need to make sure I get this meeting with the insurance guy done. I need to make sure I get that check. I need to make sure I, set this appointment. I need to make sure I do my client calls. So I circle those top 10 things on the mind dump. Now, the next step is I transfer to a 3x5 card. I live by the 3x5 cards. And I transfer and I put, Magical Monday or Terrific Tuesday or, Wonderful Wednesday. I put that and I put the date and then I put a little box, like a little checkbox so I can check it off when I'm done. And I put those top 7 priorities on my little thing. That way I can carry it with me. I can stick it in my pocket, put it in my briefcase, whatever. I have it on my desk here. And now I have my top priorities for the day. And you know what I love to do? I love to check them off. Because I checking them off, I get this jolt of energy. It's like, yes, I got it done. Okay, what's next? And because I'm putting my priorities on here, even if I don't get them done, I can transfer them to the next day, or I can look at my calendar and say, okay, when can I reschedule? When can I delay this? I'm always getting my most important things done. So, A, get it all out, dump it out on a piece of paper. B, circle the 10 most important things. C, transfer the top 7, no more than 7, because they say something psychologically about your mind can't juggle more than 7 things. So try to keep it to 7 if you can. On your 3x5 card, put a little box there so you can check it off when it's done or draw a line through it, whatever you like to do. Start your day by working on those priorities and try to make sure you eat the frog. You ever heard that book called Eat the Frog? It's the idea is to do the thing, the hardest thing first. Now, that may not always be the case. Maybe the hardest thing is going to happen in the afternoon because it's an appointment with somebody and you're just like, okay, this is going to be a tough conversation. I don't really want to have it, but I got to do it. But it's the idea is to like make sure you're working on your priorities, starting from the beginning of the day. And as you get going, check them off and celebrate. Now, if you get done with all your 7 things, start a new one or flip it over and start in the back and do another set of activities. And at the end of the day, if you don't have things done, then transfer them to the next day or put them in your calendar so that you have a follow-up and you don't forget. Chris?
Yeah, just a thought on the, what do you call it, eating the frog.
Uh-huh.
I've also heard from others, like sometimes tackle the smallest thing first so that you collect a win, which then keeps momentum going to make the next thing easier. I was wondering if you have any, opinions to that. I feel like for me, probably holding off on doing the bigger thing and prioritizing the smaller things. While yes, that feels good and can keep momentum going, there are probably times where that then just interferes and I end up procrastinating doing the big thing that's harder to do. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the different method.
I think it's an individual thing. And I think it actually also is dependent on, what works for you. Try what works for you. I think the tendency for most people, though, is to do the easy things and procrastinate on the harder and bigger things. And then they never eat the frog. And then those big problems become just delayed. And after they become delayed, then they become like serious issues, and then they become crises because they put them off. But if you're disciplined, I could see that working, building momentum, getting a couple wins, doing some short things first and getting that. I could see that working. But I think it also has to do with if you've already got the discipline of getting priorities done and you made a list and you know what your priorities are. Yeah. I
Well,
think
and
you
and
answered
I
your own question.
well, I think too, like, a small version of that too is like, how can that smaller thing um, actually end up helping you be more productive on getting the bigger thing done? Like doing the dishes, right? Like just having a clean workspace, which is, maybe debatably the smaller thing to do so that you can then do the bigger thing easier.
Yeah. I think the question is am I procrastinating or am I on purpose? If you're doing the dishes because it's purposeful and you know that you like clean space and you're doing it because you're ready and you're excited about getting into that bigger frog and eating that big frog, then yeah, it's on purpose. But if you're doing it because you're avoiding it and you're, oh, I'm not ready for that, or it's a big thing, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, or if you're afraid of it or whatever, then it's going to end up being procrastinating. It's never going to get done. So I think it's like case by case. Let me just check in. Chantel's got a couple things. Yes, there will be a recording. It will be posted in the event link, Chantel. It won't be emailed out, but it will be posted in the event link. And James, the author of Atomic Habits, said breaking down 2-minute tasks is necessary. Just get the momentum going. Yeah, I like that. And I also there's a great an author, what's her name? 54321. She has this like little rule, simple rule. It's a great book. It's just like you just count down. You say, okay, I'm going to do it.
Mel Robbins.
Mel Robbins. Thanks, Scott. Mel Robbins. That's a good little, system. Is like just get off your butt and do it. Okay, I got to do this. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Like I do that with my, getting out of bed. I never snooze my alarm. I set the alarm like at a time that I need to wake up and I get up. And if I'm like laying there and I'm tired, I do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I get up and I go. So it feels really good to have that kind of discipline. And when you invest in yourself and you follow through, think of it as like an integrity bank account. Every time you say you're going to do something and you do and you check it off the list, you're gaining in that integrity account. And every time you say you're going to do something and you procrastinate and you don't do it, you're withdrawing and you're going into debt. So just remember that like there's integrity with others, but there's also integrity with yourself. Are you keeping your agreements with yourself? Are you following through? And these little tricks and mindsets and agreements can be very, very valuable. Any other comments before we move on?
I'm going to say something. When I did a vision board after last Thursday night, and so I did find a quote, and I really like it because I'm going to hold myself to it. It's don't stop until you're proud.
Ooh,
And so as you're talking about the time allotment for certain things, the 2-minute things, or do the hard things first, just don't stop until you're proud, whatever it is. So I like that.
I like that. That feels good. Don't stop until you're proud. Whitney?
In some areas, I feel like I don't know where to start. I have so many things I can do that I don't have I don't have, like you said, everything's a big frog.
Mm. So this is
So
where
I'm not sure, you know what I mean? So how would you break that down?
that's a great question. I would use the mind dump. I would get it all out. I would
Yeah.
mind dump it and then I would prioritize it. Now, sometimes when I have a big project, like let's say I'm working on Sierra Sanctuary and I'm working on developing the property, or have a big festival and I'm working on, I need to make a project list just for that big project. So I make lists. I really love lists. It's one of my other principles that I live on. I live on lists. I have a list of clients that I need to call. I've got a list of projects so when I'm doing my mind dump, if there's a lot of stuff on there that needs to be handled, I might take and transfer all of the phone calls onto a phone list. If I have a project, I might make a project list for that project. So lists, dumping it out, prioritizing it, and then getting something in your calendar. Like never finish a a planning session without putting something in your calendar. Maria and I did a workshop last week, and one of the final things we did at the very end was like, okay, pull out your calendar, put a 1 hour time slot that you're going to follow up and you're going to review what we did today. Put it in your calendar right now. Here's another big time saver. Never end a meeting without reviewing the outcomes and scheduling the next appointment. Like Chris, you're scheduling appointments all the time. Hopefully you have them scheduled and they're routine. It's like, okay, Tuesday and Wednesday at such and such a time at this gym. But like if you're scheduling on the fly, like when you finish, try to get in the habit of doing this. When you finish your appointment, review what went well, what'd you learn, and then let's schedule the next follow-up. And so you have it on the calendar. So you don't have to track someone down back and forth, bouncing appointments. I mean, a good hairstylist will do that, right? You finish your haircut, it's like, when's your next one? So let's constantly schedule that. Get ready for it. Okay, so we've done the mind dump. We've done the 3x5 card. We got our daily action list. The last thing to do is to make sure that you have your routines for checking in. So I think Sunday night is a really important thing. This Sunday night check-in for your next week, and then also your end of the month or your monthly plan. In Optavia, we have worksheets for that. We have a monthly action plan tracker. But you don't want to just check in at the beginning of the month and then check in at the end of the month. You want to make sure that weekly you're checking in to see if you're on track. Just like for your annual goals, you don't want to do it January 1st and then check in next January 1st. You want to have some schedules that you're checking in. So annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily. Those are the routines. So if you want to really get good at this, put your goal setting and your tracking time in your calendar. Have your, we call it, Sunday for Success. That's our Sunday night get together. The beginning of the month, end of the month, I'm always doing my monthly goals. So make sure you have blocked into your calendar these reoccurring appointments where here's what I'm going to do. All right, let's open it up. We're about ready to close the call, but I want to see if there's any questions or any comments. Let's see, got a couple here in the chat from Chantel. Chantel, can you come off and chat with us? Or are you with clients? With patients. Okay. Sometimes Asana project manager helps me to keep things in one place for that project or travel ideas. Still working. I'm not familiar with Asana. Is that an app? I guess that's probably an app or something. What do you use to track your results when you check in? I tried Brendan Burchard's planner, but it was too much. The idea of placing things in one place. Yes, it's a project management program. Free. Okay. What do I use for tracking my results? Well, I actually use forms and worksheets. So there's a monthly action planner that has me set my goal for the month. How many new clients? How many new coaches? What's my volume going to be? What's my income going to be? So at the beginning of the month, I have another form that I'll do. I'll put it in the thing. It's called a structural tension form. And that's where you put your goal at the top, you put your current reality at the bottom, and then you put all the projects and actions that you need to do along the way. So I use the regular forms that I use to track my numbers, to track my goals, to track my actions, to see how things are going. I also have some apps, I have reports that I pull from the tracking system with Optavia. I have reports that I check. I have reports from my bank, I get banking reports. So I'm tracking numbers and I have time blocked to look at those numbers and to evaluate and what do we need to do. I also block time with my mentors and my coaches. I have a monthly call with my mentor. I have weekly and monthly calls with my coaches. I have monthly and quarterly calls with my bookkeeper and my CPA. And so, people that are mentoring and coaching me, I have those scheduled in as well. So tracking is done on paper. It's done in many different forms. There are some good, planners and stuff like that. I've never really found any that stuck though. I guess the best one is the one that you'll use. It's like what's the best exercise? The one that you'll do. So if you find a planner that you really like, rock and roll. I just ended up using yellow pads and 3x5 cards and then worksheets. I have a lot of forms and worksheets that I use. So if you're in an industry where there are people who've been doing it for a while and they have forms and worksheets that you can use, those are really, really good. And it's fun to go back and look at those too, like at the end of the month, end of the year, keep those, and then you can see your trends, you can see your progress. All right, it's 5:55. That's a magic number. Last few minutes before we check in, are there any other questions about the things? Let's review what we did. I'm going to walk my own talk. So the first thing we talked about is making sure you have your goal, because if you don't have a goal, then you don't need to manage your time, right? So make sure you have your goals and you know what you want to do for your healthy body, healthy mind, healthy finances. Know what your time is worth. What's your current reality? How much are you earning compared to how much you want to earn? What's your hourly rate? Break that down, know what your hourly rate is, and then compare that to what are you doing? Is there something you can delegate to somebody for $20 an hour if you're making $100 an hour? If not, if you're making $25 an hour, can you get a kid or a virtual assistant to do something for $5 or $10 an hour, So can you delegate and know what your time is worth? Next, where are you wasting time? What can you eliminate so that you can create space for productivity? What do you need to shift? What do you need to stop doing and start doing? Do you need to shift from scrolling to posting? Do you need to go from watching TV to calling potential clients? What are those high leverage activities that are going to really build for you? What are the things that are in quadrant 1 that are urgent and important? Do it or delegate it. You can do it or delegate it in quadrant 1. If it's in quadrant 2, plan it. Delay it, put it in your calendar, or if you have time, do it, because the more time you spend in quadrant 2, the less crisis you'll have. Go to quadrant 4 and delete everything. Anything that's a time waster, delete it. And be careful in quadrant 3, things that are unimportant but urgent. And that has to do with putting in boundaries, making sure you make requests and you have boundaries and you know how to, say no in an elegant way. Next, we talked about creating your ideal week. You can do it on a legal pad. You can do it on one of the charts that I've given you. You can do it in Google Calendar. Create your ideal week and get those big boulders in there. That's the next thing. Make sure you know what your priorities are, your non-negotiables, your boulders. Get those in there. And then once you have your ideal week, then put them in your calendar and make them recurring appointments. Now, know that you can be flexible, that if something changes, it doesn't have to be exactly at that time. But if it's a boulder, instead of deleting it, delay it, shift it, move it, change it from one day or the morning till the afternoon or whatever. Be flexible. Then we talked about tending the garden of your mind and making sure that you clear up your mind and use that mind dump. You get that stuff out of there so you can get a good night's sleep and you shut down those programs and you can have some extra energy to focus on what's important. And then once you have your daily priorities, you know what those priorities are, put them on that 3x5 card and get to work on them. And then the last thing is, kind of your monthly planning and making sure that you have your weekly and your monthly reviews in your calendar. Sunday is a great time to do that. Review the week that you just passed and look ahead at the week that's coming up. And then a monthly review towards the end of the month or beginning of the month to make sure you're on track for your bigger quarterly and annual goals. All right, let's wrap it up with some takeaways. Let's give anyone who wants to share what's something that you're committed to, that you enjoyed, a new aha that you had, or something that you're committed to applying into your routines.
Well, I'm going to give it a shot.
Go for it.
It's always inspiring to do these things, but then my follow-up and my action is just kind of falls by the wayside pretty quickly. So, but I want to be very intentional with this. So thank you, Greg.
So you're going to give a shot into implementing some of these things?
Yes, I've got my calendar thing out already. I'm going to go get a spiral notebook for my mind dump, and I'm going to start writing down my mind dump as soon as we're done here.
Awesome. Don't delay. That's great. Get it done right when it's fresh in your mind. I love it. Good job, Lori. You're already making a deposit into your integrity account.
I am.
Good job. Who else?
I kind of already started doing this a little bit, but I'm gonna, try and quantify more things with my new client that I'm doing my ATG level 2 cert with. She's getting a really great deal on the personal training because part of that, what I'm offering is actually for me. It's my goal in a way. And anyway, I started tracking, how much time I've been putting into, writing her program, talking on the phone, texting her back and forth, giving her feedback on a movement or whatever that she's doing. And I'm going to start quantifying more of my life to get a better idea. Because, like, at the very beginning, when you're like, sleep, fit, family, self care, work, I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like I have no clue how much time I put into most of those things except for, probably the gym, because I know I go to the gym, 4 days a week for an hour.
We lost you.
Like that's easy to.
You're back.
I don't know what happened there, but
I love it. So one thing that I'm hearing you say that you're going to start doing is to start tracking and monitoring where am I investing my time with your client and with your personal life. And that's huge. And if you go back into those 2 weeks that we talked about, just go back and do that exercise of what have you done with your last 2 weeks. That could be helpful as well. All right. Sarah put in the chat, the accountability and structure is fabulous. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. Glad to have you here, Sarah. You're a rock star.
Yeah.
I bet you're pretty
Great.
good at some of this stuff because the way you're managing your day job and your Optavia business, you've probably got some of these habits already instilled. So thanks for being here. Go ahead, Whit. Oh, she froze. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I have a question, Greg. So my whole goal for the year is just like structure and planning and just being more organized in general, and stepping into a lot more discipline. So I set a goal here that sometime around equinox, that'd be January, February, end of March. I would love to revisit both of these videos. And yeah, I know that you have the links there, but I guess I'm thinking out loud as maybe I just need to copy and paste. Well, I guess again, I'm really looking for not or you said you were going to put the videos in the event page. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know what as you were talking, Scott, the thing that popped into my mind is if you're trying to create structure and you want to do this for this year, and that's like a great goal, probably the most important thing to do is exactly what you said, is to schedule your weekly review on Sunday night. Schedule your monthly review on the last day of the month. Put it in your calendar. Schedule on the equinox. Copy these links. Put an appointment in there to review the goal setting and review your time management. And actually have that in your calendar as a reminder, and then honor that. Like once you put things in your calendar, here's the part about integrity and accountability that's important. How many times do we put stuff in our calendar that we just blow off? So if it's in your calendar, like you put it there for a reason, it's important. So if this is important to you, my suggestion is do exactly what you're saying. Put it in your, copy those links, put it in your calendar right now, and honor it when that time comes. Don't book something on top of it. Book around it.
I think something that's coming to mind for me right now is just remembering that in entrepreneurship, in a lot of ways, like in trying to have more structure with, life and business and whatever we're doing, we have to treat some of these things as if it's a job, right? Like I can't always just, call in and be like, I don't feel like coming in tonight. I have to go to the job. I'm scheduled to work. I go do the thing. And we've got to do the same thing for ourselves with this kind of stuff.
Yes. Wait, you nailed it, because you are the boss. You are your own boss. And would you hire yourself if you didn't show up every other appointment? You know? So that's a really good point, Chris. And then the other point is like really get clear on the juicy reward. Like get really excited about the benefit of being good at this. The benefit of the peace of mind that comes from getting stuff done, from feeling proud of yourself, from seeing progress. It feels good to see progress, right? To get better. And Scott, give yourself time. Don't expect, give yourself grace, give yourself time. I'm glad that you're thinking a year and 3 months at a time, because it's going to take, this is a muscle, this is a habit that you need to develop. So give yourself time and get support, get some accountability, have we have the men's group. So get some accountability in there, get a coach, make public commitments. Those kind of things will help you stay accountable, help that structure kick in. And then, you know what I found on the other side of structure? Freedom. Freedom is on the other side of structure. And I started this call by saying, I have a lot of freedom. I have a lot of, I have an amazing life, and I contribute a lot of it to the skills that I taught you guys last week and this week. So I hope you guys embrace them. I hope you use them. And I'm here for you. If you need any help, just reach out, and let's go make this our best year ever. Who's ready to make 2024 an awesome year?
Me.
Yes. All right, you guys have a great night. Love you guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye.
Bye.